just once, sometimes I'd like to stop you more, to ask you what was happening in your mind, what were you saying to yourself, what was happening in your body, and we talked a little about that yesterday. Were you tense? Were you fidgety? Were you like so involved that you were like grasping for everything? Were you backing up? And what was happening in your heart? What were you feeling at that moment? And the reason I wanted to draw your attention to that is that in the world, and we'll be talking about the Enneagram at some point, and some of you guys have never heard of the Enneagram. Some of you are like, I'm coming because we're going to be talking about the Enneagram. And our Enneagram type affects how we show up in our creative lives. Today, I'm not going to go into more detail other than to say heart, head, and body are three primary ways of us that we engage in the world. And we all engage in the world in all three of those ways, but we all have a primary way of engaging in the world. I am what's called a head type. So I pay a whole lot of attention to what's happening in my head. I think very fast, and I have a hard time accessing my emotions. So when I stop and ask you, what are you feeling? For me, it's like, I have to really work at it. I can get there, but that's not my dominant way of reacting with the world. So I want you to kind of get in rhythm, and I'll try to remind you to say, okay, what's happening in your head? What's happening in your heart? What's happening in your body? And your body is probably the most important part of that in some ways, because our body gives us so much information. We've believed that we are head down for so long, and research in neuroscience is showing that, oh my gosh, so much is happening in our bodies that informs how we're doing our art and how we're living, that it's really good to learn how to tune into that. I talked about flow. The more that Kathy and I can give you opportunities to engage and feel that flow, the more that's one part of your well-being and your ability to thrive. And if you have just hints of that while you're here in France, that's awesome. And then there'll be some things that you can take back with you that will help you to really undergird your well-being in regards to how your creativity gets expressed in your lives. So that's some foundation that I wanted to lay. The next thing that I wanted to remind you is that you're creative. You are creative, all of you. Some of you aren't looking to me or taking notes, but I'm trying to get you like an eyeball. You're creative, you're creative. And you are here for a reason. No one is here by any mistake. And I love that. And we have been embracing you for a year, some of you, because of when you registered for this. No mistake that you're here, you creative ones. And you have something to gain, and you also have something to give. So I want you to keep that in mind. What am I going to get from being here, and what do I have to give? I'm already watching dynamics and personalities coming out and seeing some really beautiful things in terms of your helpfulness and your attentiveness to each other, your comments. So that's just beautiful. But what I want to focus on now is a concept that you're already familiar with. I'm going to put a coach's spin on it. You're already familiar with a couple of terms. One is inner critic, okay? One is imposter syndrome. And I'm going to talk about that same thing with the word saboteurs. Has anybody ever heard of that before? Some of you have coached with me, and you know that we talk about saboteurs. What the heck are they? Where did that inner critic come from? Where did that imposter syndrome come from? So I just want to focus on that for a few minutes, and then we're going to, at the end of this brief conversation, we're going to banish saboteurs from the studio, which is why I was hoping we could start out there, but a little chilly. So saboteurs, we all have them. We all have several. One of mine is who I call my inner seventh grader. And when some of my friends get together and they're going to go on a trip together and they give no mind to my participation, nor should they. I'm not even in their inner circle, but my inner 7th grader goes, poor me. Why didn't they think of me? I wanted to go. I would love that group. So that's Andi's inner 7th grader. I haven't given her a name, but I could. I could name her anything that would be appropriate. So that's one example of an active saboteur in my life. Saboteurs love the creative process. They love to show up when you're learning something new as an adult, because we don't bother learning new things a lot of the time because it's hard. When you're a kid, you're like, oh, I'll try it. This would be fun. I'll go for this. But when you're an adult, we have neural pathways that are developed. We choose what we're good at. And so in this setting where Kathy's giving us some new things, sometimes we're like, yeah, no. This feels really uncomfortable. Jelly plate? How many of you have never touched a jelly plate before? Okay, that was brand new. So at first, you kind of feel awkward. You put too much paint on. You don't put enough paint on. It dries. You get frustrated. You wipe it off. And then after a while, you start going, oh, look what this can do. That attitude of play I told you to bring in. But there is often a saboteur that's speaking to you. That one of them, for a lot of us, is I'm not enough. Yeah, I see you nodding your heads. I'm not enough. Or how many times have you said, or do people, when you told them you're coming to an art retreat, I'm not creative, I could never do that. Saboteurs speaking that. And those saboteurs came from somewhere. And when we're kids, because we all had imperfect parents, maybe somebody. Did anybody have perfect parents? No. So and a few of us in the room. Not most of us are not parents, but a few of us are parents, and we know that we're imperfect parents. And so, as little people, we created worlds and ways to keep us safe in the world. And that is a big time when saboteurs would have come in. And it would have been something that served us really well when we were 3, 4, 5, to be the perfect one, or to be the helper, or whatever it might be, to keep us safe with our imperfect family that we had. But you guys, now, we don't need them anymore. We had neural pathways that make us go in that direction, but through awareness, when awareness arises, we can choose whether to go in that direction or pick another direction to go in. Part of my role to be here is help, like I said yesterday, help to raise awareness. What's happening when I start to do something new? And what voices are in there? So what I want you to think about is what saboteurs are active in your life. They might show up when you try something new in the creative realm, but they might be in your professional life, in your parenting, in your health, in your caregiving, all the different things that we're involved in your friend group. So I want you just to take a minute, and I want you to think about some of those that are in you. And I know it's a little weird, okay? It's a little weird to work on that. And so I will try to come up with a couple more personal examples. But what I want you to do is you're going to actually personify a couple of those. And usually somebody has one that really gets in the way. And it may have been a grandmother, okay, that never said anything nice to you. And so she's Esmeralda. Okay, that doesn't mean that it was your grandmother's name, but that saboteur, you may decide to name Esmeralda. And when you name that saboteur, it's time to choose how to get that off your back, away from your heart, out of here, whatever it might be, whoever it might be. put it in a box, set it on a shelf, because there's a lot of things we don't need anymore, and we don't want them getting in the way. We don't want any of them in the studio. So now I'm going to stop. I see some emotions arising, and I'm going to ask for you guys. We've created a beautiful trusting space yesterday, and for those of you who are noticing, oh yeah, I'm noticing something coming up. If you are willing to share, we can carry that with you and help you take that saboteur and put it away while we're here in France, and maybe even leave it in France.